Have you ever heard of a case so haunting that it takes over 40 years to solve? The tragic story of Lynette Dawson is one such tale, a story of love gone wrong that has haunted Australia since January of 1982. Lynette disappeared without a trace, and the last person to see her was her husband, Chris Dawson. Chris filed for divorce, stating that Lynette had left on her own accord and soon married Joanne, his high school lover. But was that the truth? Did Chris have something to do with Lynette's disappearance? In this video, we will uncover the most disturbing case of Lynette Dawson finally solved after all these years. Stay tuned until the end and you will be shocked at what you discover. Australia is known for its endless summer, golden beaches, and exotic locations, but even this beautiful country has its dark secrets. Lynette's disappearance was hushed up, and it took 15 years for the investigation to take a turn when fresh eyes sat down to pore over the cold case file. The podcast brought renewed attention to the case, and the public outcry led to a renewed investigation. Lynette was a homemaker and a childcare worker born in New South Wales, Australia in 1948. She met Chris Dawson in 1965 at a high school function, and they married in 1970. They had 2 daughters together, but as time went on, their marriage showed significant cracks. Chris was a former model and rugby player for the Newton Jets, and his good looks attracted longing stares. On the morning of January 8, 1982, Lynette spoke to her mother, Helena Sims, and made arrangements to meet the next day. This was the last time Helena would speak to her daughter. The investigation into Lynette's disappearance uncovered some disturbing information about Chris and his twin brother Phil. Both men were accused of conducting numerous affairs with underage schoolgirls while teaching physical education at Cromer High School. The scandal has been hushed up, and their brothers were allowed to resign quietly. The case of Lynette Dawson is a tragic reminder that even in a country as beautiful as Australia, dark secrets can hide just beneath the surface. It took over 40 years for justice to be served, but finally, Chris Dawson was charged with Lynette's murder. While the trial has yet to take place, Lynette's family finally has some closure, and her story serves as a warning to all of us to be vigilant and protect those we love. Joanne alleged in subsequent interviews that Chris had groomed her and had sexual relations with her while Lynette was sleeping upstairs. Chris had continued to live with Joanne while Lynette's whereabouts remained unknown. Chris eventually reported Lynette missing 6 weeks after she was last seen, claiming they had fought over finances and other marital issues. He suggested that Lynette had joined a religious organization. In 1983, Chris filed for divorce and married Joanne, selling the Bayview home he had shared with Lynette and moving to Queensland with Joanne and their daughters. However, the marriage didn't last, and Joanne eventually left Chris and moved back to Sydney, where she made contact with Lynette's family and the police. She claimed that Chris had groomed and manipulated her, inviting her to move in after telling her that his wife was gone and not coming back. She also alleged that Chris had wanted to hire a hitman before Lynette disappeared. Although Joanne's statement did not yield any significant breakthroughs, they did place a target on Chris's head. In 1997, Sergeant Damien Lund took charge of Lynette's missing person case, launching a full inquiry into the incident. Physical evidence was limited to a missing persons file and a piece of paper with Lynette's name on it. Lund did not believe that Lynette staged her own disappearance, given her strong bond with her family and the fact that her 2 daughters were too young to fend for themselves. He placed an article in the local newspaper asking for leads, which yielded numerous tips and leads. Police then excavated the pool and patio area of the Bayview house after Joanne had mentioned that there was dirt around the pool. They found a pink cardigan near the pool, but DNA testing did not match Lynette's. In 2008, the Teacher's Pet podcast, produced by journalists Tom Headley and Slade Gibson, thrust the case of Lynette Dawson into the media spotlight, highlighting previously undiscovered evidence in the missing person case. The podcast investigated the relationship between Lynette and Chris, shedding light on the mental and emotional abuse that Lynette had suffered. Chris was painted as the likely suspect in Lynette's disappearance. The podcast also explored the failure of institutions to protect women like Lynette and Joanne, and the reality of life in the Dawson household, attested to by neighbors and friends. A story of alleged dominance unfolded in the minds of listeners as Headley strongly believed that Chris was responsible for Lynette's disappearance. Chris's apparent lack of concern over her absence only served as further evidence to support Hadley's conviction. The Teacher's Pet podcast brought to light new evidence that prompted the New South Wales Police to review the case in 2018. Despite 2 coronial inquests failing to prove Chris's involvement, the police believed that he was responsible for Lynette's death. Chris's criminal convictions were thrown out in 2001 and 2003 due to a lack of evidence. However, after his arrest in 2018, Chris was granted bail in 2019 before pleading not guilty to Lynette's murder in 2020. After Chris's application to have his trial postponed due to media attention was granted, a judge-alone trial was held and began on May 9, 2022. The trial lasted for 10 weeks, and on July 11, 2022, Judge Ian Harrison presided over it. The prosecution argued that Chris had murdered Lynette to start a new life with Joanne, while the defense suggested that Lynette had left on her own accord. On August 30, 2022, after 5 hours of deliberation, Judge Harrison found Chris guilty of murdering Lynette. The trial's aftermath reopened old wounds as Lynette's family was still left without a body to bury, her daughters without the chance to say goodbye to their mother properly, and now a father they loved and trusted awaiting sentencing. Chris's guilty verdict shattered the illusion that their father was their protector, and they must now rebuild the broken foundation they were raised upon. Justice was served for their mother, but it means losing their father. It is a tragedy that no one can fully understand, and the family must now find a way to move on from the loss of Lynette and the consequences of Chris's actions. Joanne, too, is a victim of Chris. She was manipulated by a man she should have trusted, someone who played with her emotions until she folded to the world. She is the Scarlet Woman, the one who broke apart a family because of lust. The sensation caused by the trial allowed the public to forget her side of the story. Joanne looked to Chris for guidance. She came from a troubled background and turned to the person she felt comfortable with. She was a child herself when she fell into the clutches of a predator. During Joanne's testimony at Chris's trial, anyone listening in would have been able to hear the cries of a child who desperately wanted to be loved. She put up with the attention because she was under the impression that he loved her, and she had no idea that he was just acting out a sick fantasy. Joanne, too, was subject to Chris's torment. She felt suffocated and used by Chris while the couple was married. Lynette's loved ones praised her bravery and realized that she, too, was a victim of the crime. Renee Sims, who was Lynette's sister, expressed how thankful they were to bring to light the monster that Chris Dawson was. She said they were extremely appreciative. As we conclude this video, it's important to remember that the case of Lynette Dawson is a tragic reminder of how love and obsession can turn into darkness. It's a cautionary tale of the dangers of manipulation and control, and the importance of speaking out against abuse. We hope that this video has shed light on this heartbreaking case and has helped bring attention to the importance of justice for victims of domestic violence. While Chris Dawson awaits his trial, we honor Lynette's memory and the strength of her family who never gave up on seeking justice. We also commend the journalists and investigators who tirelessly worked to bring this case to the forefront and uncover new evidence. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.